He had nothing. No family, no house, not even a good jacket to keep warm in the freezing mountains. But when Gideon Nash found a hurt girl lying in the snow, he decided to help, and that choice brought 30 tough guys with weapons to his cave in just a few hours. What he thought was a kind act was about to start something way scarier than he ever thought. The cold wind whipped through Gideon's thin old shirt as he hiked up the rocky hill, his tummy hurting from not eating. He hadn't had a real meal in 3 days, and winter was coming fast to the mountain tops. At 16, he knew how to get by, with just bits of food and a lot of grit, but the big storm coming was going to test even his tough spirit. A spot of red in the white snow stopped him cold. Blood, fresh blood. Following the trail, Gideon found her, a girl his age, passed out, with a bad cut on her leg. Her leather dress was ripped, and frost was already on her dark hair. She wouldn't make it another hour in that cold. Every part of him said to walk away. Getting mixed up with tribal stuff was trouble, the kind that got people like him killed, or worse. But when he looked at her pale face, something stronger than staying safe took over. "Can't just leave you here," he mumbled, kneeling next to her. She moved when he touched her shoulder, her dark eyes popping open, full of fear. Her hand grabbed for a knife on her belt, but she was too weak to hold it steady. "Whoa, easy," Gideon said, holding up his hands. "I'm here to help." She spoke fast in her language, pointing to the mountains in the east. Even though he didn't know her words, he got it. She needed to get home, quick. She tried to stand but fell right away, crying out when her hurt leg gave out. Gideon caught her before she hit the ground, feeling how icy her skin was. She was freezing bad. "Those mountains?" he asked, pointing east. "That's a 2-day trip through Dead Man's Pass." She nodded, tears turning to ice on her face. Gideon checked his stuff, just a little food, no bandages, and clothes with more holes than fabric. Taking her through the mountains might kill them both, but leaving her would definitely kill her. "Okay," he said softly. "We go together, or we don't go at all." For the next 18 hours, Gideon half-carried, half-dragged the girl through rough land that would test even the toughest mountain guys. She kept passing out, muttering words he didn't understand, but felt deep down, maybe prayers or warnings. When they finally got to her tribal land, she could stand a bit. She pressed a small carved stone into his hand, then vanished into the woods without looking back. Gideon stumbled back to his cave as the sun came up, tired but alive. He'd done the right thing even if it almost killed him. But when he got near his cave, something made him freeze. Tons of hoof prints were all around it, fresh ones. And carved on a tree by his entrance was a weird symbol, 3 lines with an arrow through them. Someone had been there, someone who knew exactly where he lived. Gideon circled his cave 3 times before going in, his hand tight on his rusty knife. The hoof prints told a story he didn't like. At least 15 horses, maybe more, all with tribal-style shoes. They'd waited here for hours, checking out his stuff, learning how he lived. Inside the cave, everything looked the same, but something felt off. His blanket was moved just a tiny bit, enough for him to notice, since he knew every inch of his stuff. His cooking pot was tilted wrong. Even his pile of smooth river stones was messed up. They were looking for something, he whispered to the empty cave. But what could I have that warriors would want? He had nothing valuable, no gold, no good weapons, no secrets about settlers. Then his fingers touched the carved stone the girl gave him. In the light, he saw it clearly, a shiny black rock with fancy symbols carved deep. It felt warm, almost alive. A branch snapped outside. Gideon froze, every muscle tight. That wasn't the wind. Something heavy stepped on a stick, trying to be quiet but messing up. Peeking through a crack in the rocks, his heart almost stopped. 3 warriors sat on horses 30 yards away, watching his cave. War paint covered their faces, and eagle feathers were in their hair. Their eyes stayed locked on his hiding spot. They knew he was there. How long had they been waiting? How'd they find him so fast? The girl couldn't have told them. She was barely awake when they split up. One warrior raised his hand, and somewhere behind the cave, horses whinnied softly. More riders. He was surrounded. The lead warrior got off his horse slowly, his hand on a tomahawk that looked bloody from recent use. When he spoke, his voice carried clear through the thin mountain air. "Boy who helped our daughter, we know you're there." Gideon's throat went dry. Daughter? The girl was someone big, not just any tribal member, but family to these guys. "Come out, we just want to talk." Every story he'd heard said getting mixed up with tribes meant death for guys like him. But he was trapped like a rabbit with nowhere to run, and winter coming fast. The warrior kept talking, his voice sharp enough to make Gideon's skin crawl. "You have something that's ours." The carved stone felt like it was burning in his hand. Whatever it was important enough to bring armed men to the mountains, important enough to track him down in hours. Gideon closed his eyes, feeling the weight of his choice. Step out and face whatever they wanted, or stay hidden and die of thirst or cold when winter locked him in. When he opened his eyes, the lead warrior was walking straight toward his cave, and his face said he was done waiting. Gideon stepped out, hands up, the stone hidden in his fist. 30 warriors appeared from behind rocks and trees like ghosts turning solid. More guys than he'd thought, all armed, all staring at him with faces he couldn't read. The lead warrior stopped 5 feet away, close enough that Gideon could see scars on his tough face. This wasn't a normal hunting group. These were serious fighters, and them being here meant something way bigger than a simple rescue. "I'm Takakota," the warrior said in careful English. "Ayana is my daughter." Gideon's mouth went dry. A chief's daughter? He'd saved a chief's daughter, without knowing. Now her dad stood in front of him with enough men to wipe out a small town. "She told me what you did," Takakota went on. His dark eyes locked on Gideon. "How you carried her through deadly cold when you could have left her." The other warriors stayed quiet, but Gideon felt their tension like a storm about to break. One wrong word, one wrong move, and this talk would end badly. "Anyone would have done it," Gideon said, his voice cracking. Takakota's face changed just a tiny bit. "No, most wouldn't. Most are too scared of us to help." He waved at his men. "We're hunting the guys who attacked our camp. 3 settlers with guns who shot my daughter when she tried to warn them off our sacred land." Gideon's stomach turned to ice. Settlers, guys like him, guys who might think he was with them. "We tracked them to your mountain," Takakota said, his voice getting harder. "Their trail went right past your cave." He didn't finish, but Gideon felt the unspoken words like a punch. They thought he might be part of the attack. "But Ayana described the boy who saved her," Takakota said. "Skinny, hungry, with kind eyes and gentle hands. Not someone who shoots women." Relief hit Gideon, but it didn't last. If these warriors were hunting armed settlers here, blood was gonna spill soon. And when the law came looking, they'd find him, the only white guy around. "The men you're after," Gideon said carefully. "They're still up here." Takakota nodded, looking grim. "Close, very close. They're camped in the valley below, thinking they're safe." His hand touched his tomahawk. "They're wrong." A younger warrior spoke fast in their language, pointing to the valley. Takakota's face got darker as he listened. "What's up?" Gideon asked, not sure he wanted the answer. "My scout says smoke's coming from their camp. They're cooking fresh meat," Takakota said, his voice super quiet. "Meat they stole from families they killed yesterday." The situation hit Gideon like a ton of bricks. He was stuck between a war party wanting revenge and desperate bad guys with nothing to lose. The mountains that kept him safe were about to turn into a war zone. Takakota stepped closer, his vibe strong and scary. "You saved my daughter's life. For that, I give you a choice." Gideon waited, barely breathing. "Leave these mountains before sunset. Ride far and fast and never come back." Takakota's eyes drilled into him. "Or stay and help us stop the men who spill innocent blood on our land." The carved stone felt heavy in Gideon's hand as he realized the tough spot he was in. Run and always wonder if he made the right call, or stay and join something that could ruin everything he had. But as Takakota waited, gunshots rang out from the valley below. The shots bounced off the mountain walls like thunder, followed by screams that made Gideon's blood run cold. Not battle cries, screams of fear and pain. Takakota's warriors turned from still statues to fast action, jumping on their horses like pros. But Takakota stayed still, his eyes on Gideon. Choose. Now, boy, the fighting's already started. Another round of shots cracked through the air, closer now. Someone was running up the mountain, shooting wildly as they climbed through the trees. Gideon saw 3 guys scrambling up the slope, the settlers running toward his cave in a panic. "They're coming here," Gideon whispered, getting the awful truth. The bad guys knew about his cave. They were bringing the fight right to him. Takakota's face turned deadly. "You know these men?" "No," Gideon said fast. "But they've been watching my camp. They know where I live." The lead warrior's grip tightened on his weapon. In seconds, armed killers would hit the cave, with 30 tribal warriors after their blood. Gideon would be stuck in the middle of a slaughter with no way out. "Get behind the rocks," Takakota told his men. "Let them come." But Gideon saw something that made his stomach drop. One of the running settlers had a rifle he knew, a fancy brass one he'd seen in town. It belonged to Marshal Crawford, the lawman who'd been missing for 2 weeks. These weren't just thieves. They'd killed a federal marshal. "Wait," Gideon called as the first settler crashed through the trees 50 yards below. "If you kill them here, the army will come. They'll blame your people for the marshal's death." Takakota got it right away. Dead settlers at a tribal ambush would bring soldiers and punishment on his whole tribe. The 3 bad guys were close enough now that Gideon could see their faces. Wild, scared men with blood on their clothes and death behind them. The leader spotted the cave and pointed, yelling to his buddies. They wanted to use his cave as a hideout. "You can't let them get to the cave," Takakota said grimly. "If they hole up there, we'll have to fight them out. Lots of us will die." Gideon's mind raced. The settlers were 30 seconds from his cave. The warriors needed a clear shot but couldn't risk starting a big fight. And he was the only one who could stop this from turning into a bloodbath that would hurt innocent people. The carved stone felt like it was beating in his hand. Suddenly he understood why Ayana gave it to him. It wasn't just a thank you. It was a sign of trust, of duty. He stepped out into the open, right in the path of the climbing bad guys. "That's far enough," he shouted, hands up. The lead settler raised his rifle, finger on the trigger, his eyes crazy with fear. "Get out of the way, kid, or I'll shoot you." Behind the rocks, 30 warriors pulled their weapons quietly, waiting for Takakota's signal. One wrong word from Gideon and the mountain would explode. But instead of moving, Gideon did something that shocked everyone, even himself. He sat down right there in the middle of the standoff, with guns pointed at his chest and 30 warriors, ready to attack. He lowered himself to the ground and crossed his legs like he had all day. "What are you doing?" the lead bad guy growled, his rifle shaking between Gideon and the rocks where he sensed danger. "Waiting for you to decide," Gideon said calmly. "You can shoot me, but the second you do, you'll have way bigger problems than whatever's chasing you up this mountain." The bad guy's eyes darted around, nervous. His 2 buddies reached the rocks, panting and bleeding from cuts they got running. They'd lost their horses, most of their bullets, and hadn't eaten in days. "We just need your cave for a bit," the leader said, trying to sound nice. "Then we're gone. That cave belongs to the tribe whose land you're on," Gideon said, pulling out the carved stone. "And they don't like trespassers." The second the bad guys saw the tribal stone, their faces went pale. They'd been in the area long enough to know what it meant. "You're with them?" the second guy gasped. "I'm trying to keep you alive," Gideon said, "which is more than you deserve after what you did to Marshal Crawford." The leader's rifle snapped back to Gideon. "How do you know about that?" "Because you're holding his gun and his blood's still on your clothes," Gideon said, his voice steady even though his heart was pounding. "Question is, how? Many other innocent people did you kill on your way up here?" Behind the rocks, Takakota's warriors stayed hidden but ready. Gideon felt them like springs ready to pop, waiting for the signal to attack. But he knew if the fighting started, it wouldn't stop until everyone was dead. "Here's the deal," Gideon went on. "Put down your guns and turn yourselves into tribal justice, or keep running and hope you reach the border before winter freezes you solid." The leader spat. "We're taking that cave." But as he stepped forward, an arrow stuck in the ground 6 inches from his foot. Then another, then a third, each closer than the last. The bad guys spun around, trying to spot the archers, but saw only rocks and shadows. Panic started to beat out their desperation. 30 warriors, Gideon said like he was chatting about the weather. All around you, all with orders to take you alive if they can. He paused, but they're not feeling super kind after what you did to their families. The truth hit the bad guys hard. They weren't being chased by a small group. They'd walked into the land of a whole war band wanting revenge. You tricked us, the leader said, his voice breaking. You tricked yourselves, Gideon shot back. The second you chose to hurt innocent people on their sacred land. Another arrow zipped past the second bad guy's ear, and he lost it. He dropped his rifle and threw his hands up, tears running down his dirty face. I give up. I give up. But the leader wasn't done. With nothing left to lose and crazy in his eyes, he swung his rifle at Gideon. If I'm going down, you're coming with me. The shot echoed across the mountains, but Gideon didn't feel it. A tomahawk hit the leader, and he fell before he could pull the trigger. Takakota stepped out from the rocks, his warriors moving around the two surviving bad guys like water around stones. In seconds, the danger was over. But as Gideon stood, brushing off dirt, he realized something scarier than the mountain wind. That gunshot would bring soldiers in days, and when they got here, they'd find dead settlers in tribal land with Gideon as the only witness to what really happened. Takakota tied up the two surviving bad guys with leather strips while his warriors checked the bodies. What they found made Gideon's worst fears real: military papers, maps, and a cavalry officer's badge in the dead leader's bag. These men killed more than settlers, Takakota said grimly, holding up the badge. They attacked a military patrol. Gideon's stomach sank. Killing a marshal was bad, but attacking soldiers meant the army would send a big group to check it out. They'd follow the trail of trouble right to this mountain, and when they found bodies in tribal land, they wouldn't ask questions. How long before soldiers get here? Takakota asked. 3 days, maybe 4, Gideon said, trying to figure out army travel times. But when they come, they'll see dead white guys and live natives. Won't matter what really happened. The chief's tough face showed no feelings, but Gideon saw the heavy responsibility in his eyes. One bad choice could bring war to his people, kids and families who had nothing to do with this mess. My warriors want to scalp these men and leave their bodies for the soldiers, Takakota said quietly. Show what happens to those who attack our families. That'll start a war that'll kill more innocent people than these 3. Ever could, Gideon said fast. One of the tied-up bad guys, a young guy barely older than Gideon, started crying hard. Please don't scalp me. Please, I didn't kill anyone. I just ran when the shooting started. Takakota looked at the crying guy with cold eyes. You ran with killers. You took their dirty money. You're guilty. But something in the young guy's fear gave Gideon an idea. A wild plan that might save everyone if he could get Takakota to trust him completely. What if the soldiers never found bodies at all? Gideon said slowly. Takakota's eyes narrowed. Explain. These guys were running from something bigger than your war party. They talked about gold, land fights, territory stuff. What if they just vanished? Got lost in the mountains during winter? Never seen again? The tied-up bad guy's eyes got huge, scared of what Gideon was suggesting. The army will still come looking, Takakota said. But they'd find my story instead of bodies, Gideon said. I'd tell them the truth. Bad guys came through, got caught in a big snowstorm, probably died in the deep valleys. Happens. Every winter. Takakota was quiet for a long time, thinking about choices that could decide his people's future. His warriors watched him, ready to follow whatever he decided. And these 2? He asked, nodding at the tied-up men. They go with you. Your people need witnesses who can say the tribe was defending itself, not attacking. When the time comes, they'll tell the truth about who started the killing. The young bad guy nodded like crazy. Yes, I'll tell them everything. How Crawford tried to arrest us for stealing land. How my partner shot him when he wouldn't. Take our bribe. I'll swear to it. But Takakota still looked unsure. White men's promises mean nothing against white soldiers. Maybe, Gideon said, but it's better than starting a war over dead bad guys. A warrior came up to Takakota and spoke fast in their language, pointing to the valley. The chief's face got serious as he listened. "What's wrong?" Gideon asked. "Scout says army dust is on the eastern trail. They're already coming." Gideon felt cold fear. "How many?" 20 soldiers moving fast. They had hours, not days. Whatever they did had to happen now before the soldiers got there and found proof of the fight. Takakota made his choice like a guy who'd spent his life balancing war and survival. "Move the bodies to the deep canyon," he told his warriors. "Make it look like they fell in a storm." As the warriors picked up the dead bad guy, Gideon saw something that froze him. The man's rifle had gone off when he fell, and the bullet hit the cave wall, leaving a fresh mark in the stone. "The soldiers will see that," Gideon said, pointing at the bullet scar. "They'll know there was a fight." Takakota looked at the damaged stone, his jaw tight. "Then we make them see something else." The chief gave quick orders in his language, and his warriors started changing the scene. They scattered cooking gear by the cave entrance, built a small fire pit, and spread out. Gideon's few things to make it look like he'd lived there a while. "What are you doing?" Gideon asked. "Making a story the soldiers will believe," Takakota said, grabbing some charcoal. "You've been living here peacefully. The bad guys came, demanded stuff, shot warning shots when you said no." With fast strokes, Takakota darkened the bullet mark until it looked like old fire damage, not a fresh bullet. Other warriors scattered old bullet casings from a hunting trip, making it seem like lots of people had been shooting over days. "You fought them off," Takakota said, "but they ran into the storm. You never saw them again." It was a good story. But Gideon saw a problem. "What about their horses? The soldiers will track them here." Takakota gave a grim smile. "Their horses died in the canyon with them. Sad accident." The warriors worked crazy fast. In less than an hour, 30 guys had totally changed the scene, moved 3 bodies to a far-off valley, and made a story that would fool army investigators. But as they finished, one of the tied-up bad guys freaked out. "You can't leave us with him," the older guy begged, staring at Gideon with scared eyes. "What happens when the soldiers leave? What happens to us?" Takakota's face gave nothing away. "That depends on if you keep your promise to tell the truth." The sound of horses echoed off the canyon walls. The soldiers were closer than they thought, moving fast like they meant business. "Take positions," Takakota told his warriors. "Stay hidden until I say." As his men blended into the rocks, Takakota put a strong hand on Gideon's shoulder. It wasn't just a move, it was trust, respect. "You saved my daughter's life," the chief said quietly. "Today, you might save my people's future. This makes you family to our tribe if you want it." Before Gideon could answer, the carved stone in his hand got warm. He looked down and saw its symbols had changed in the light, showing deeper meanings he hadn't seen before. It wasn't just a thank you. It was a sign he belonged. "I want it," Gideon whispered. Takakota nodded once, then disappeared into the rocks like he was never there. 20 soldiers rode up over the ridge, their blue uniforms bright against the snowy land. Leading them was a captain with the tough look of a guy who'd spent years on the frontier, his eyes already searching for signs of trouble. Gideon stood alone by his cave, the 2 tied-up bad guys at his feet, ready to tell a story that could save a whole tribe or doom them. The captain pulled up his horse 10 feet away, his hand resting easy on his gun. When he spoke, his voice sounded like someone used to being listened to. "Son, I'm Captain Morrison, Territorial Cavalry. We're after 3 guys who killed a federal marshal and attacked an army group. Seen them?" Gideon looked Captain Morrison in the eye, the carved stone warm in his hand. "I saw them, Captain. 3 guys, desperate and dangerous. They came through 2 days ago wanting food and shelter." The captain got off his horse, his sharp eyes checking out the camp. "And I told them I don't help criminals," Gideon said simply. "Told them to keep moving. That's when they started shooting." He pointed to the darkened mark on the cave wall. "Warning shots, trying to scare me into helping. When that didn't work, they took my little bit of food and headed into the high mountains." Captain Morrison looked at the bullet mark, the scattered casings, the signs of a fight. Everything matched Gideon's story. "These the guys who were with them?" the captain asked, nodding at the tied-up men. No, sir. These two showed. Up yesterday, half frozen and starving. Said they'd been with the gang but got lost in a snowstorm in the deep canyon. The older bad guy nodded fast. That's right. Crawford tried to arrest us for stealing land. But when he wouldn't. Take our partner's bribe, they shot him. Me and Billy here, we ran when the killing started. The younger guy, Billy, was crying again. We didn't want anyone to die, Captain. When the shooting started in that canyon, we just kept running. Haven't seen our partners since. Captain Morrison studied their faces closely. Frontier soldiers know how to spot lies and truth. You're saying your partners are still out there? If they're alive, Billy whispered. That canyon's deadly in winter. Nobody survives. Up there without good gear. The captain walked to the edge of the rocks and stared out at the huge wilderness, miles of rough land, hidden valleys, and early winter storms that could bury people without a trace. We'll search the area, Morrison decided. But if they went into the deep mountains during that storm, he shrugged. Nature takes care of justice out here. Gideon felt relief rush through him, but kept his face blank. What about these two? They'll face trial for their part in Crawford's death, but their cooperation will help them, the captain said, getting back on his horse. Son, you did the right thing not helping those killers. Took guts. As the soldiers got ready to leave with their prisoners, Captain Morrison stopped. You planning to stay up here alone all winter? Gideon glanced at the hidden rocks where he knew Takakota's warriors were waiting. Actually, Captain, I got an offer to stay with some local friends. Good folks who know these mountains better than anyone. Smart move. These peaks don't forgive guys without friends. After the soldiers left down the mountain trail, Takakota came out from hiding, his warriors appearing like morning fog. The chief's tough face showed something Gideon hadn't seen before, real gratitude and deep respect. You spoke well, brother, Takakota said, using a tribal word that meant family you choose, not born into. Your words stopped a lot of fighting. Gideon held out the carved stone, but Takakota shook his head. Keep it. You earned it. The chief put a strong hand on Gideon's shoulder. Our winter camp has room for one more if you want. To stay. Looking back at his empty cave, then at the warriors who called him family, Gideon's choice was easy. I want to stay. That night, as snow fell on the high peaks, Gideon sat by a warm fire in the tribal camp, learning his first words in their language while Ayana shared stories of bravery and belonging. The kid who had nothing was now family to a whole tribe. His simple act of kindness had changed not just his own life, but stopped a war that could have hurt tons of innocent people. The carved stone sat in his hand, no longer a mystery but a sign of the family he'd gained by choosing kindness over safety, courage over comfort. If you liked this story, click the video on your screen now to watch another awesome tale where fate and bravery mix in ways you'd never expect. Don't forget to subscribe and maybe drop a super chat to help us keep sharing stories like these. Your support means the world.